we're now live. Ta-da! With the magic of the internet, the World
The,
Wide Web.
the interweb.
Does anybody? Yeah, does anybody call it the web anymore? Does anybody call it that?
Yeah, I don't even know.
The web. Yeah, I don't know if I would call it the web. The
Yeah,
net, maybe. I don't know.
I, I don't. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think so. I don't think
I don't
anybody
know.
calls it
I
that.
think everybody just calls it the internet, right? Or
Yeah, I think that
I don't know.
just the internet. Yeah, the World Wide Web is gone.
Yeah,
I don't even know
I
when it
would say
died.
so.
I don't even
We
know
don't
when
even
it
say
disappeared. It just did. It didn't
people
even have
give
a
out
funeral.
websites. They don't even say www dot anymore.
You don't
Like
need to.
they just understood, I guess. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess not. Anyways, all right, you ready? Ready to
Yeah.
roll that beautiful bean footage?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Shut up and sit down.
Boom. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Dope and Dharma. This is the Dharma Time Edition, and it is, I think we're on time today. I think today's Tuesday. I haven't looked lately, but
It's Tuesday, but it's not
I'm
1
assuming
o'clock.
it's Tuesday.
But it's not 1 p.m.
No,
I
it
mean,
is
it's
definitely
so-
not 1 o'clock. But yeah, but it is Tuesday. So if you're listening to this live on either Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch under Dope and Dharma, it is Tuesday for you as well. Unless, of course, what is it now? It's so unless you're one of my friends who's in Taiwan listening to this live, it is Tuesday. If it's for him, it's Wednesday morning. But I
You have
digress.
Taiwan
I'm
friends?
going to assume I do. He's been on the show before. Remember? It was a while back, but he was on the show. Anyways, once again,
I know who you're talking about.
yeah. Anyways, so welcome, Dope and Dharma. He is, of course, the one and only 1%er, dope, the dope doctor, and I am the lowly 99%er, the Dharma guy. I'm the other end of the spectrum, guys. Anyways, I'm the Dharma guy. He's a dope doctor. This is Dope and Dharma, the Dharma Time Hour. Welcome.
That's right.
Um,
And how can they
yeah,
join
you
us?
got
and stuff?
anything you want to?
Like Marissa on Facebook Live is hello, Marissa.
You must have missed that at the top of the show when I said if you're watching live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch live. But I'll repeat it anyway.
What'd you say, Sonny?
Exactly. Or you can listen whenever you want on a podcast platform. You could be listening to this right now while you're driving or running on a treadmill or something. Although I'm not sure I would choose us to listen to while you're on the treadmill. So if you did, more power to you.
I would just rather choose. I would just rather choose not to be on the treadmill, personally.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem for either one of us right now.
Right.
Anyways, so today's an interesting show. Today, so for years we've talked about we've mentioned the word narrative, right? She's nice. For those of you who aren't aware, on our Facebook Live, one of our longtime listeners, Marissa, wrote in. She's running right now. Which, if you don't know, the humor in that is because she's in a wheelchair, so she's obviously running. The irony there is what's funny.
She's running up here, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And I'm gonna let my dog out because he is losing his mind. But anyways, so he doesn't care that we're on air right now. Yeah, he's gone now. So anyways, so for years now, we've said a word over and over and over on our shows, any one of them, be it the Couch Live, Dharma Time, or We the Middle. The word narrative comes up an awful lot, actually. And I don't know that we have ever really kind of addressed what narrative actually is, right? I think we just took for granted that people probably have an idea of what it is or how it's formed, things of that nature. So today we're going to actually talk about it.
Are we playing Webster today?
We can. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have readily available the actual definition of it, but go ahead.
By the way, does Webster
matter of fact, while you talk, I'm going to go ahead and look up the Webster.
Good. Does Webster still exist? I mean, like, is there still a Webster? Because we have changed so many definitions of words that I thought maybe Webster got canceled and maybe there's a new, maybe we have found Webster to be somehow internally biased and we canceled Webster. Is there a new Webster?
Well, there's a Webster like online. This is the most simplistic definition I think I've ever heard in my life. Narrative, the online definition of it, and this is taken from Oxford Language. I just typed in Google narrative
See,
definition.
that's not even.
It
See,
says,
that's not Webster. That's not Webster.
yeah, it says a spoken or written account of connected events, a story. So yeah, and then Merriam-Webster is on here though. There's a website for it.
Okay, good.
And it
good.
says, oh, this is even worse. Narrative from Merriam-Webster 1A, something that is narrated. There you go. That solves it. I thought you couldn't use the word in the definition, but whatever.
Webster can do whatever he wants.
Apparently so. So 1B is a little bit better. It says a way of presenting or understanding a situation or series of events that reflects and promotes a particular point of view or set of values. That I think is what you and I typically refer to when we talk about narrative.
Right.
So narrative is an interesting thing, right? So like, let's first of all, I guess let's just go ahead and cover that, right? Like we already kind of addressed what narrative is. To me, right, like my interpretation of that very eloquent Webster's definition of it is basically our narrative is the story we tell ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the gaps that we fill in with what we're seeing in front of us. So what we're seeing in front of us is a particular things that are playing out, and the narrative is we fill in whatever we don't know, meaning the intentions of the person, why they're doing what they're doing, how they did, what led up to this, what's going to happen next. All these thoughts and these feelings and emotions, all the unseen stuff, we those gaps. That's the narrative to me. Would you agree with that assessment, or do you have a different definition?
That sounds pretty good. I was thinking about it a little differently. I was thinking about it. You know how maybe has this ever happened to you? This should be a question. Has this ever happened to you? Because it happens to me. I'll be walking along with Dana, walking the dogs or something. This just happened the other day. And I said, Dana, that's a really pretty plant. And she said, which one? And I said, the pink one. And she like just laughed at me. She chuckled. And she said, God, what color was it? It was a different color. Oh, no. She goes, the purple one, you mean? And I go, no, the pink one. She goes, that's cute, but yeah, it's purple. So the story I'm telling you is because that to me is how narrative is. If in my head I have that it's pink, then I don't care what Dana says. That plant looks pink, and it's some sort of version of pink. And if in her head she sees it to be purple, no matter what I tell her, she sees it as some sort of variation of purple. And that is the way I view narratives.
Right on. Yeah, I agree. I think we're kind of saying the same thing, just differently.
Right.
To me, what you're talking about goes more into how it's formed, I guess. Like, I think that's where the uniqueness comes in. And obviously not to jump the gun, but we're going to get there. But to stick with what is narrative, like whether we know it or not, everything's going to have a story. Everything's going to have a purpose. Everything's going to have a past, present, and future, whether it's told to us or we make it up. Mm-hmm. Right. If, no matter what it is, somebody comes to you and they say something. And if it's very vague, you're going to immediately try to figure out, right? Because our brain loves to do that. It loves to fill in gaps. Your brain doesn't like unknowns. So it's going to try to know whatever it is. Even if it's fake or even if it's made up, your brain's going to try to know it. And so your brain's going to try to figure out why they said what they said, what they meant when they said it, what were they thinking when they said it, what's going to happen now that they did say it, what's going to happen if I don't acknowledge it. Like your brain likes to fill in all these different gaps and stuff.
Right,
and that's to me is the narrative, right? And I think it happens all the time. Like whether you realize it or not, it's not like a conscious thing that we try to do. It's this vibe that we get, right? It's this feeling that we get, which aren't facts, but we convince ourselves that they are. I mean, how many times have we done that? Like, I know I'm guilty of it. I've done it before in my past. I still do it daily, I'm sure.
Oh, come on.
Where somebody will say or do something and you'll immediately take offense to it. And then you'll realize afterwards that it was never meant that way. You just kind of took it that way. Or, my wife was guilty of telling me all the time about my tone, which half the time I have no idea what she means, but from her perspective, I had a tone, right? But all that really means is she interpreted the way I was saying it in some way that gave her a narrative that, hey, this isn't good. Regardless of what I meant or where I was coming from, in her mind, that tone signifies this. And that we're going to get to why in a second. But the main point I'm trying to drill in here is, if you're listening to this, you have formed narratives in your life. You do it daily, and the people around you do it all the time. So I just don't want anybody walking, well, I don't do that. Yes, you do. That's kind of how it works. I'm sure there's somebody out there who's going to think, well, no, I reserve everything until the facts come. No, you don't. That doesn't mean that based on.
We might be on a delay. I apologize if we are. Actually,
I think so.
It's the Wi-Fi in New Smyrna Beach. It's that 1% Wi-Fi. It's different than your 99% Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Well, hey man, we got to punch you somehow. You can't win everything.
Yeah. I pay more and get shittier service. I forgot what I was going to say. Trinity, go ahead.
Why don't you just walk out to the beach real quick? Where the rest of us hang out. So like I said, you were saying the proof is in the pudding, right? The proof is, and you're going to come up with some brilliant example of how we form narrative, whether we realize it or not. But yeah, we do it all the time. The one I see it done the most, right? Which I think is hilarious to me is, and I see my wife do it a lot, which I'm sure anybody who's like a big animal person does. Mm-hmm. We transpose almost our thoughts and our feelings onto that animal, as if the animal's thinking something other than, I want food and I'm tired, right? Like, we'll think that the dog is like hurt its feelings or something, right? My wife will make sure that if she gives one animal this, she has to give the other animal, be fair, because she doesn't want the animal thinking this. I'm like, pretty sure the animal's not thinking any of that, but in her mind, that's what they think, right? And so to me, I think that's funny, because I don't think she's the only one. I think many people do it, where we think that this animal has deduced all of this logic about what's taking place and who did what, when the animal's probably just sitting there. It reminds me of, have you seen that meme where one, like a girl and a man are laying in bed? At least I assume that's how they identify.
Where's this going,
a man and a woman are laying in bed, and he is laying on this side staring off into space, and she's laying on this side looking back at him, and there's a thought bubble. She's like, I bet he's thinking whatever, and then his thought bubble is something completely different than what she thought it was going to be. That's what it reminds me of.
He's probably thinking a lot like the dog, which is, I wish she would just scratch my butt. Because that's what my dog is always thinking. My dog is always just wanting for me to just scratch it. That's all he's thinking, I'm pretty sure. I mean, he might say, I want to go potty or I want food. But the third thing he's always thinking is, he's like, can you just scratch my butt real quick? That's it.
Based upon my dog's behavior, my guess is he's always thinking either A, I want something to eat, or B, hey, can you give me attention? That's what I'm thinking he's always thinking, but I could be wrong. Who knows? Maybe he's thinking, please don't touch me.
Maybe he's thinking, scratch my butt. Watch, maybe scratch his butt real quick. See what you'll see the look he gives you. He'll do that little look like this. Doug does that. You know what I mean? He just bends. He bends a little bit. Like he's like, that's the spot right there. Yeah, that's what he does. So
actually, my dog, if I scratch right above, like right at the base of his tail, he'll start looking at the air.
There you go. You go. What's up, Katie? How you doing, Katie? On Facebook Live as well. No, I remember what I was going to say, Trinity. What I was going to say is that the proof is in the statement of my truth. When people say my truth, I accidentally said it the other day on the show, but I didn't mean it the same way. But I laughed when I was doing some reels, and I was like, oh, geez, hey, I said this stupid thing now. It's getting into the normal language, right? To say my truth. That's proof that narrative exists. Right? Because it's like, no, there's a truth.
Yes.
You think you have a truth, but no, you just have an opinion. You have a perspective. Yeah. Why don't you just call it my perspective? What is wrong with you just saying my perspective is? Instead, you got to say my truth. This is my truth, as if it's something virtuous that we all have to accept. Because It's
That's
your
the thing.
truth. I have to accept it because, it's your truth. I can't argue your truth.
Yeah.
But when it's your perspective, we can argue it. But that's why people took the word perspective out of it and put the word truth in this. It's like, ha, ha, ha. Now you can't argue it.
Yeah.
So I think narrative is just like that.
Instantly more valuable.
Because if anybody would say, hey, man, that's just my narrative. Like, that is the most honest thing you could say, but who's going to say that, Trinity? Who's going to say that's just my opinion anymore?
Yeah.
Or that's just my narrative anymore? Nope. Just old people like me still use that word.
Yeah, and yeah, same here. I get in trouble all the time. It's like, oh, that's your perspective. That doesn't mean it's the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and so how do we form that, right? Like, how is narrative formed? I think that
I blame your parents.
Realize once yeah, my mom didn't hug me enough. But we joke, but that's kind of how it goes, right? Like what we don't realize is from an early age, we're like a clean slate. And as we go through life, as we see things, as we experience things, as things happen around us that we go through,
right.
Our brain is learning. It's learning to guess what's going to happen next based upon what happened previously.
Right.
And that's all quote unquote reality is, right? All reality is our best guess of what's going to happen next based upon what we've seen in the past. Sometimes we're right. Sometimes we're not. However, narrative is going to form when things take place to us. And oftentimes something's going to happen that leaves a real deep mark, right? Maybe we had past trauma, something really hurt us, something great happened, and we have a great memory. So that's all going into narrative. That's all going into how we're going to perceive the very next thing. For example, right? This is a horrible example, but it popped in my head, so I'm going to run with it. It's terrible. We're talking about dogs, right? I've been around many dogs in my life. And there's been some dogs in my life that I've walked up to that I've never even met before ever. It's just a brand new dog. And when I go down to pet it, sometimes it'll flinch. It'll go back. Well, I don't have any experience with this dog ever in my life. I've never met it. However, I can already tell you its past. I can already tell you that dog's probably been abused. How do I know that? Because it had no reason to think that I was going to do anything other than put my hand out to pet it or love on it or whatever. However, it looked at me and something about it said, hey, I'm gonna pull back just in case it's gonna hit me. So somewhere in that dog's life, it's learned when somebody comes this direction, it's very likely they're gonna hurt me. So I'm gonna pull back and pull away. That's narrative. It filled in the narrative about what he thinks is gonna happen, not based on anything other than what it's been through. And I've seen other dogs who get aggressive or whatever. So like we all do that. We see it mostly in relationships, right? Like how many times in relationships, if the person doesn't text you back right away, then all of a sudden they're cheating on you or whatever it might be. Like we have this narrative that we fill in, and it's not necessarily based on that person or their behavior or our relationship with them. Oftentimes it's based upon, hey, this person hurt me in the past or whatever it might be. So therefore I think you could be doing it as well. And so that to me is partly how our narratives are formed. I think the other part is our community, right? Where we come from, our environment, our culture, how we're raised, the things that were brought up. I'm trying to think of examples here. I know like a lot of my Spanish friends, in their culture, the way they're brought up, when you meet one another, you kiss each other on the cheek or something like that. And it's totally normal. But when I was a kid, when I was first introduced to that, I was like, what the hell's going on? It didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand what was happening. So for me, my narrative was that was weird and inappropriate, to whereas my Spanish friends are like, it's weird and inappropriate that you don't do that. Right. And so, and I had to realize that wasn't my truth. That was just my narrative. That's what I was raised around. That's what I was used to. So therefore I had to realize, okay, well, there's a different way of looking at things. It's not inherently bad. It's just different. Right. And so like, if for instance, is an example of how that could go terribly wrong is if you're like a jealous person or something like that, and you see somebody greet your spouse with a hug and a kiss like that, if you don't know that those are normal behavior, you might get upset. Like, what are you doing? What? So that's an example, I think, of how narrative is formed and how it can be a problem. So what are your thoughts? How is narrative formed to you?
Narrative to me is formed by people pissing you off. I think it starts in childhood. Your parents are the first ones to piss you off. So you form narratives that the parent, anti-establishment. That's your original establishment, right? Which is why you want no rules and no boundaries, and
parents, they just don't understand.
Age ain't nothing but a thing. You know what I mean? Because I'm 7. What do you mean I got to be an adult? You know what I mean? 7's old enough.
Yeah.
What do you mean I can't walk across the street? Watch me. I'll walk across that street when you go to sleep. You know what I mean? So you start forming all kinds of narratives by the oppression that you start feeling from your parents, and then the oppressor gets big, and then it becomes the school, and then bigger, and then it becomes the law enforcement, and then it becomes the government. Yeah. You know, it's always someone else, right? It's always the bigger oppressor.
It's always the man holding you down.
It's always the man. It's always well, not anymore. No, it could be a woman or they. So whatever, because they are badasses and they control you. So I'm gonna call them theys, you know, because they are plural, and so I think that's how narratives are formed. They're formed by a series of events that piss you off, or like you even said, or you got celebrated. So either celebration or piss you off. But the ones that are deeper and the ones that you tend to argue the most are the ones that piss you off because, again, that's your truth, right? That becomes your perspective of a certain thing. That becomes your narrative. That becomes your ideology of the world. And look, we both work in addictions, right? So there is not one person out there that's ever had a drug addict or an alcoholic within their close circle that doesn't feel like they know what alcoholism or drug addiction is. By having it within your circle, you automatically think, look, I know I had one. I know my uncle was one. My dad was one. My mom was one. I was one. He was one. She was one. They were one. You know, we all have that lived experience, right? And if we have that lived experience, then we feel that's truth. Not really understand that science doesn't work that way. Science is a lot broader than that. It has layers to it. It has variables attached to it, right? You have to have a constant. You have to have an unaffected one. You have to have a control, right? And you have to have more subjects than just one. Can you imagine if we would put out medication the way some people create narratives? They create a narrative from their one life, right? Or their little circle. Can you imagine if we would create a medication based on just your experience? Just yours. It worked for me, so it must work for everybody. Hey, by the way,
terrifies me.
By the way, the internet's full of those medications that aren't really FDA approved, but you're all buying them anyway because somebody out there is on TikTok going, "Hey, this worked for me. It gave me a bunch of energy. I lost tons of weight." Or that's narrative. that's somebody's experience, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. It's and then there's things that would work for most people. See, the thing about it, Trinity, is that nothing works for everybody. Nothing is 100% useful for everybody. And people, if you're waiting for that, then you don't even understand science yourself. And you need to go back to 6th grade and play with the Bunsen burners all over again so you can get here. Because you fast forwarded to the end thinking that you were going to understand it, and you're walking around not understanding it and not getting it. And by doing that, you're having a lot of arguments with people about some really important things, but you miss the entire scientific method in the middle. You need to go back and understand what the scientific method is so you can be a happier person, because you don't look happy. You sound frustrated. You sound angry. You're losing friends. You're losing family members. And worst of all, you're losing yourself. You don't even know what you think and believe anymore because your narrative is guiding which exit you get off of and which road you take and which road you travel. And when your narrative is guiding all that instead of your true passion, or instead of your true purpose of why you were even created and built in the first place, like, why is that not an issue anymore? Why do you care what a turtle was created for, but you have no freaking understanding of why you were created? Like, you understand that a turtle should be protected from the moment it's an egg. You can't even walk and stomp around it. You can't even turn on a flashlight or anything. But for some reason, it doesn't matter where you came from. What only matters is your truth and how you feel and what you want and what you think. That is why you're frustrated and depressed and anxiety-ridden and frustrated with all the rest of us. And you think we're all idiots. No, it's not that we're all idiots. It's just that we're allowed. Well, we are. Let me take that back. We all are idiots, but so are you. Yeah. That's part of it. That's humans are idiots. Yeah. We're brilliant and idiots all at the same time. You know, that's called life. You know, your entire life, you're creating this balance between your complete idiotic thought process and your true brilliance, and that's your life. You're constantly balancing your brilliance with your idiocy. That's my perspective, by the way. That's my
look
narrative,
back,
Trinity.
and there you go. There's a word that I can think of that I was very, very thankful that I learned back in the day. Not because of the word itself, but because of what the concept that it taught me. And that was anecdotal. Because I remember I heard anecdotal one time, and it was like talked about something. I was like, anecdotal, what does that mean? And so I looked it up. I was a kid. And then when I looked it up, I realized what anecdotal was. And it opened up my idea to, wait a minute. So just because I'm seeing something doesn't mean everybody else is seeing the exact same thing, right? There's majority, and then there's just what I'm seeing. And so for me, that was like a big moment. That was like when it introduced me to the concept of what I'm seeing is not what everybody else is seeing. And I was like, whoa, right? Like, and another, I guess, I don't know, it's a saying, a cliche. I don't want to call it cliche, but it's a saying that's out there is, you hear hooves, you don't think zebras, right? So just because you hear hooves, we
where do they say that?
Horses or cows. You never heard? You hear hooves, don't think zebras? It's like oh well. I have to get you a book or something. Anyways, but it's true though, right? I say, if you hear hooves, you don't typically think zebras. You think, horses or cows. Okay. That's because you associate hooves with horses or cows, but there's many, many animals that have hooves. So it's just a saying to express the same idea that we're talking about. But for me, anecdotal was the word that when I was a kid took me down a path that I was very grateful for, because not everybody has the same lived experiences. Even if you come from the same neighborhood, even if you come from the same family,
same house,
right? How many twins are completely different as far as what they're interested in, and they have the same parents, same exact background, but one turned out this way and one turned out that way. And so that to me is the definition of anecdotal, right? Like you can't. Another example that you said one time, and I think you were being tongue in cheek with it, but I still thought it was hilarious, and it's profound, right? And it's simplistic, but it's profound in the sense of the debate about spanking kids, right? So many of us who are the older generation, we got spanked, and we think back of, you know what? I learned my lesson, right? I had to get spanked a little bit. I got it. So that's all the younger generation needs is spanking. Well, on the flip side of that, if your life turned out horribly, you're probably thinking, I'm never going to spank my kids because that's what caused it. And so when you point out one time, it's like, yeah, because there's nobody in prison who ever got spanked as a kid. It has to make you stop and think, well, wait a minute. Yeah, there's probably a lot of people in prison who got spanked or even worse, and it didn't work. Exactly. And so this it's anecdotal in the sense of, well, it worked for me, should work for you. Or the other phrase I love so much that kind of goes hand in hand with narrative that I've heard countless times when we were doing the groups for addiction stuff. When I've done the stuff with the spiritual coaching and everything, I hear it nonstop. And it's the basis for narrative. It's the basis for judgment. It's the basis for the criticism, and it makes us feel wonderful. And that is, they should have known. And it's like, well, hold up. I remember having a conversation with somebody. I think it was one of my classes one time. I used to do it at the cafe or whatever. And this girl that was in my class was so excited about kind of standing up to somebody who she thought was being loud and aggressive. And in her mind, he was being loud and aggressive because he was angry at her and he was trying to control her and just this monster bearing down on her. And I was like, wait. And so I dug a little bit deeper and I found out that I was more on the mark than off the mark. But I was like, well, how do you know he's not just from a family or a community that's just how you talk with one another? You just get loud. Like you're loud, you're boisterous, you're aggressive. Maybe that's just how, he's from a big Italian family, it turns out, from Brooklyn. Like, that's just how they talk. Like in his mind, he wasn't being mean or aggressive. He was just talking. That's just how because I've had some friends from New York who are boisterous and everything. I keep saying New York, but they're from everywhere. But there's just
hang around my house a little bit, Trinity. Hang around my house. We're just loud.
Some people, some cultures or some households are just loud. right? So for them, they're just loud. They're constantly trying to talk over one another, and it's like this competition type deal. It's not intended to be so. They're just boisterous, just loud, man, just full of energy and life. Nothing wrong with that. But if you come from a more quiet and reserved family, you're going to look at them and like, dude, what did I do to piss you off? Why are you so mean? Why are you so aggressive? Like, well, what do you mean? I'm not. I'm just talking loud. And so that's an example of what I mean by anecdotal, right? Like in your mind, this is what you're associating. So that to me, once again, is how we form our narratives. Like every single thing that we're interacting with, it's important that we realize that is just a guess. You're guessing based upon everything that you've seen up to this point. You don't know. Right. You don't have a crystal ball. You have no idea. You're just guessing. And the problem is, anecdotally speaking, I don't know how right we are. I think we all think that we're right more often than we're wrong. And that's what keeps us doing it. But if you actually took the data and polled how many times we're right versus how many times we're wrong, it might be 50-50, where it might actually be we're wrong more than we're right. Right. We think that we're right a lot. Right. We think like, oh yeah, I nailed that one. I knew that was coming. Okay. Well, how many times did you know something was coming and you were dead wrong? Or you knew how somebody thought and you were dead wrong? I think that's go ahead.
If we all knew, we sure the hell wouldn't still be paying bills. We sure as hell wouldn't even be caring about the bills that we had to pay. Ain't none of us knew nothing. We were all wrong. There's nobody out there that's been right most of the time, because I would ask you then, why did you pick the existence that you're in? Right? Like, if you're frustrated financially, you've been wrong. If you're frustrated in your relationship, you've been wrong. If you're frustrated about where you live, you've been wrong. You've just been wrong a lot. Right? Nobody has hurt you more than you. Nobody's lied to you more than you. And the whole world out there has so much more truth in it that you can explore. But instead, you're constantly painting the picture that you want to see instead of just seeing it for what it is, man. It's just a little bit different than what you're experiencing. Perfect point. You ever drive down the road and someone points out something, even in your own neighborhood, that you never saw? I mean, you never saw it. Like someone comes to visit and we're driving and they go, oh, you have a blankety blank store. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what is that? Is that new? And then my wife would be like, no, it's always been there. I'd be like, that's always been there? That store? I've never seen that store in my life. You know what I mean? And it's just your eyes just only see what it wants to see. Like, you ever buy a white car and all of a sudden all the cars you see are white? You ever buy a certain type of car and all of a sudden that's all you see is those types of cars? That is narrative. That is perspective. Is that you get accustomed to seeing Tootsie Rolls everywhere when you love Tootsie Rolls, man. It's just, that's the old commercial. And if you don't know that commercial, you got to look it up. It was a great commercial. I wish we could play it in the middle of this and just, everything looks like a Tootsie Roll to me, because that's the way the world is. If you love something, or if you believe in something wholeheartedly, that's what you see everywhere. It's one of the biggest reasons that in the industry that we're in, and helping people get clean and sober. Well, I used to get frustrated with some of the old timers that existed before I got in the field, or like when I was new in the field, because no matter who they evaluated, they thought that person's an alcoholic. And I'd be like, okay, they got a DUI. I get it. They got a DUI. But does just the DUI make them an alcoholic? And and they would go down and try to fit, because all we had at the time was a DSM-4. So we had these 7 symptoms, and it looked very subjective in nature, and it was. It was only 7 symptoms, and it was a pass or fail kind of diagnosis, right? This is before the DSM-5 and all that. And people used to make these judgments based on it. It was like, God, there's got to be more to it than just an experience of getting caught. I said, because there's a lot of people out there that have driven while intoxicated by law. Are you saying all those individuals are alcoholic, or only because they got caught? Now I gave you the alcoholism. It's like, dang, now you have it.
Oops, you caught it.
So these are, there's things like that just exist, right? Like, some people just pretend to be, they're wannabes, right? And I know it's a weird thing to want to be, but there's people that want to be alcoholic. They just try to act like one. They try to drink like one. They try to act like one. They go out there and get trashed and throw up and stuff like that. But to be honest with you, real alcoholics, they don't do all that. Real alcoholics, they're not throwing up. they're not really looking trashed a lot of the times, that's the weirdness of this whole deal, right? Is that whatever you think you probably don't know. And that's the secret to the sauce that we're all simmering in, right? Is that we really only know the ingredient we're putting in, and even that ingredient we're blind to. We're most blind to the ingredient we're providing. So if we're most blind to the ingredient we're providing, then what makes you think you understand my ingredient and Trinity's ingredient and everybody else's ingredient to this nice little special sauce that we're all just simmering in? Look, I'm on a need-to-know basis, and I'll let you know when I die. I'm hoping that I get all the answers in, but if I don't, I'll just come back and do this all over again and be just as ignorant the second time as I was this time.
Yeah. I think so the word that popped in my head when you were talking was confirmation bias, right? Like so oftentimes we'll formulate a hypothesis, right? We'll come up with this idea, this thought, and then we look for things to prove that thought right. That was why early on, somebody would ask me like if I would look at my wife's purse or something like that. I was like, no. I was like, what do do you trust her that much? I was like, first of all, yeah. Why would I be with her if I didn't trust her? Secondly, if I go looking for something, I'm going to find it, whether it's there or not. It doesn't matter. If I approach every situation that, hey, this is what it is, then my brain is going to bend every single thing to make that a possibility. And so that's one of the reasons why I love science, for instance, because in science, you form a hypothesis and then you spend all your time trying to disprove it. And at the end of the day, if you try to disprove it and it still comes out to be true, then it's objectively true. Right. And I think that we need to do more of that. And we don't. We approach the situation. You know how many times I've seen a situation play out where the person is so convinced that their narrative is correct that they don't even believe when the other person tells them that it's not, and it's about them, right? Like, how many times have you been in or seen somebody in a situation where they thought that they know what you're thinking and you tell them no, and they oh yeah, right. Like, they still don't believe you. They're so convinced in their narrative that they don't even believe you when you're telling them no, that wasn't in my mind at all. Right. And it happens all the time, usually like, close relationships, but we get so convinced in a narrative that we don't even believe when the evidence is presented otherwise by the only person that would actually know. We're still so convinced that it's more reason to think that you're lying to me, who, maybe you're a close person in my life. You have no benefit of lying to me. You have nothing to gain. You're not a liar. There's no reason why you would lie. It's still more believable to us that you're lying than we were wrong in our narrative. That's how powerful narrative can be.
Yeah, you're right. Like, when you said that, I was thinking about, like the old studies back in the day when they would show like a chimpanzee trying to stick these toys and the little kid things like the square and in the circle and the circle and the square. And the chimp was smart enough to figure it out. But we see people every day online, like just clearly not figuring it. And not only they're not figuring out, but they got a whole bunch of people behind them that just I don't know why that circle didn't fit in that square. That circle should have fit in that square. You know what? That they shortened you. They messed with you. That circle is supposed to fit in the square, but they somehow they messed it up, and they did that on purpose to you to make you look so. No. How about the circle just doesn't fit in the square? It doesn't do it. I mean, it's sad to see how much primates are actually more intelligent than us in regards to learning, because whatever part of the brain creates a narrative, animals don't have it. Animals go on basic instincts, man. If it doesn't work, not only do they no longer do it, but the next generation comes out with that knowledge to not even do it in the first place.
Yep.
Because you said that the dog, like you met a dog and the dog was just like somehow had put off to you, right? But that's because it's a domesticated dog. Domesticated dogs, they have our stupidity now. Like, they're just like, they learn like that. They lost their basic instinct of just knowing whatever. By the way, I think because you're huge, Trinity. I mean, you're really large, so if something your size was coming up to me, I'm gonna flinch too, brother. And trust me, the only person I really flinch to is my 5'4" mother, and she used to have a hell of a punch. She probably still does. but Anyway, but animals automatically know what's dangerous and not dangerous is some until they get domesticated, and then they accidentally trust and distrust incorrectly, right?
Sure.
That's why we're not supposed to feed the alligators. That's why we're not supposed to feed certain wild animals, right? Because once they become trained, then they become more aggressive and problematic. See, that's the issue. Once we try to humanify. Can I say that? Is that a word, Trinity?
Humanized, maybe.
I like humanify better, Trinity. It sounds cooler.
Yeah, we can go that.
I'm gonna go that route.
Humanify, but that's all right.
No, humanify. We like to humanify things. And when we Marissa on Facebook Live is trying to tell me humanize also. Nope. I don't like humanize. It's humanify. We try to humanify things. When we do that, we somehow screw it up, right? Because what we forget is that everything is natural, including us. We are part of nature. Like you've said it before, right? We're your nature, I'm nature. That means everything we create, no matter how abnormal or weird it is, no matter how metallic it is, no matter how electronic it is, it's still nature. It's still part of nature because we're part of nature, and therefore everything we've created is nature, right? So it's that same thing. Somehow we took that understanding and go, oh no, this is technology and that's nature. And so now we all have this idea that nature must mean trails and hiking and woods. And you say, why does that mean nature? You're like, well, because everybody knows that that's nature. Well, yeah, right. But it's going on the assumption that somehow we built this stuff from some foreign object. Then, like, no, it's all built from. See, so that's how narratives are formed. They're formed by accepted ideology, right? So if we continue to change accepted ideology and accepted things that are just known, and we start creating these stories, and we all follow it like little sheep. Yep, that's the truth. That's the truth. Then what happens in the future? In the futures, that becomes the truth. That now becomes the truth.
I am 1,000% glad that you brought that up because it reminded me. So what we collectively don't understand is how malleable our narrative really is. We think that our narrative is truth oftentimes, and it's cemented in stone, and nobody could ever push us off of it. No, there's some studies out there, and I encourage you guys, if you're listening to this, to look it up. I don't remember the names of them, but you can type in the basic description and you'll get it. Louis might even know the names, but I'm thinking of one particular study where and it's been duplicated multiple times, where they'll have a group of people in a classroom type setting or in just a general area. And they'll take three lines, and they'll ask which line is the longest line. And then they'll have paid actors, or they'll have people who are in on the experiment who all pick purposely the wrong line. And when I say how long the line is, I'm not talking about like they're within millimeters. No. Like obviously different. Like, even a blind person could probably see that this line is longer. Mm-hmm. But if everybody in the group says that line A is longer, even though line C is clearly longer, the person who's not in on the experiment, more often than not, switches their answer to align with the group thinking. Yep. Even though they know the right answer and they were going to say the right answer, but because everybody before them said the wrong answer, they just assumed that maybe they knew something they didn't, or they questioned their own reality based upon what other people were saying. That's how easily our narrative is messed up.
Right.
Marketing. Right? Marketing is a perfect example of how our narrative can be manipulated and messed up. We get sold things that we don't need, that we don't want, but we buy them anyways. There's so much science that goes into how easily our narrative is done, that the whole reason why they came up with small, medium, large is to get you to buy the medium, right? Because when science shows if there's three choices, we'll take the one in the middle. If there's two choices, we don't know which one. If there's too many choices, we don't know which one. 3 is the perfect number. Why? Because we all go to the middle, right? And so there's outliers, of course. But my point is, we're not as concrete and individual as we think that we are. We're very easily malleable. There's so many things around us that affect what we think is our truth. It's not really your truth. It's just, once again, the things that you're around, the things that you've experienced. It all impacts what your guess is about what's going to happen next or what should happen next. And so it's not this scientific ironclad, truth that you think it is. No, it's an illusion. It's illusion based upon everything that you've been through, everything you've seen, everything you've experienced, everybody around you that you respect or don't respect. It's all like, it's like a house of cards, right? That's just going to collapse at any given moment because it's not as solid as you think it is. Some things might be, but I would say many of them are not. So I'm glad that you brought that up, by the way.
Trinity, and it's not even everything we experienced. It's actually how we interpreted everything we experienced.
Yeah.
Because again, going back to the siblings, not even twins, just regular siblings, because everybody, not everybody, most people out there, well, how about many? Let's use the word many. You see, I can't even say things that I allow myself to say. Many of us have siblings, right? And the parents are always go, I don't know what happened to Louis. They were both raised the same. I don't know why Louis acts like that and Jimmy acts like that. They're both raised in the same household. They both went to church. They both, it's and it's like, I don't know, but there's little differences. You know what's more important than the genetics that you've been given is how are you interpreting the genetics that you've been given? And if you interpret them in a negative way, a painful way, an unacceptable way, you're going to live the rest of your life trying to change that or correct that or fix that. And that involves the need for help. That involves the need for some conversation. And unfortunately, we don't live in a very loving, available bubble that we can have a truthful conversation about my personal feelings, attitude, confusion without someone else's interpretation. So I'm kind of excited about this AI technology ability that exists in the point where if you can truly feed the AI with all perspectives and not leaning in any one direction, man,
good luck.
Well, I'm just saying in a I'm going to say in a perfect world, in a truthful scenario, and I got to believe the scientists behind it will want it as truthful as possible. Maybe not all the others, right? But the scientists behind it will want it to reflect both different sides, right? All sides of the equation, all sides of the angle. Then I'm interested in seeing how it kicks back therapeutic conversation. Because as a counselor, I still, as much as I don't want to be biased, I still have my interpretations, my ideology, my upbringing, my culture, what worked for me, what didn't work for me. It's impossible not to. Yeah, I work really hard to not make it anything about me, but that is not easy, and it takes a lot of skill to like be there totally for that person. And I'm very happy with myself when I find myself helping somebody through something in a way very different than what I would ever think that I would say, which is why when people say, oh man, he's so good, or and I'd be like, you know what? It's not me. Cause sometimes when I'm sitting there, I could swear the words are coming from something else, not me. I'm a vessel, which is why I say I'm a true vessel, because I become like this open little vessel that the words come out of my mouth and I'm like, where are those coming from? Where are those thoughts coming? I'm not this smart. There's no way I would have said that, or I know that. So whatever alien form, life form, spirit form, God form exists out there that's speaking through me, I think it's incredible. And so if AI can, if that's what AI is, and it's using me right now, then we need more of that. But instead of it using me, we know it's a machine. Instead of you thinking it was Louis, but really I'm I'll peel my skin and you'll see that I'm metal underneath, and that freaked me out. So I would hope not. I hope I'm not a lizard underneath this thing. You know what I mean? I don't. Am I
only
reptilian?
RH positive or RH negative or whatever?
Is that what it is?
My wife is reptile. Yeah, she's a reptile person. Yeah, we'll talk about that off air. It's a funny thing with RH in your blood. But anyways,
what are you saying right now? You digressed and you threw me in the hole with you now, though. So now I'm in the hole with the RH negative lizard, and I don't know how to get out of the hole with the RH negative. Can you pull me out of the hole, please?
There's like RH positive and negative, and the majority, I don't remember which one it is. I think majority of those are RH positive, I think, and then like a very small percentage is RH negative, and there was like these conspiracy theories that the RH negative people were lizard people. It's a funny thing, but and
I
my wife
I
is one
said,
of them.
pull me out of the hole. I said, pull me out of the hole.
Well, I had to
You're digging me in the
deeper.
hole.
Let's go ahead.
You gave me a shovel.
Yes.
You gave me a shovel. I asked for a ladder, right?
Yes.
And then you go, oh, he wants a shovel. No, I don't want a shovel.
Yes.
I want a ladder.
Yes.
Get me out of the hole.
I'm going to encourage the rabbit hole. So let's go ahead and dig down this rabbit hole then, right? Can we change the narrative? Let's start there. And yes, we 100% can change our narrative. Is it easy? No, it's not. Is it doable? Yes, with some consistency and some mindfulness. Yeah. And kind of what I mean by that, right, is for me, whenever I approach a situation, number one, I try to keep in mind the unknown, and that is anything other than what's happening right in front of me. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know why they did what they did. I don't know what they're feeling about that. As much as I want to convince myself that I'm all knowing and all seeing, and I know what they're, no, I don't, and I have to keep that in mind. So, like with my kids, for instance, when they come to me, the father in me wants to kick in and just explain to them all this stuff, because based upon my narrative, this is what they're thinking, this is what they're doing, this is what they need to hear. And it comes off as lecturing. But instead, I need to, I do my best to listen more and try to really truly understand where they're coming from, and realizing their narrative. And their narrative at their age is, I'm trying to fit in. I'm trying to be cool. It matters to them, right? Because I catch myself all the time. They'll say or do something, and I'm like, oh, what are you doing? That's ridiculous. But then I have to stop and think, like, wait a minute. When I was 13 years old, I was doing some really ridiculous things that made sense to me. That doesn't mean that I don't bust their chops every now and then, right? Because my two oldest ones, I'm going to go ahead and call them out here, because it's hilarious. I let them do it, right? But I'm sorry, I cracked on them quite a bit. I did make fun of them a little bit. It wasn't fun. But my two older ones, before they left the house, when they were probably about 16 or so, give or take, each of them, they both did it, and they were a couple years apart, so they followed each other. They did this. So one time I'm sitting in the living room, and one of them comes out wearing glasses, but they don't wear glasses. And the glasses were like clear frames. There was no prescription. It was just glasses to look like they had prescription glasses. And I was like, what, why are you wearing glasses? You don't wear glasses. I'm like, no, I was like, but you don't wear glasses. Like, why are you trying to, do you want me to get you like a neck brace too, just in case? Like, what are we doing here? Right. I used to crack on them. I would crack on them for doing those things, because it's like, why are you giving yourself an ailment that you don't have? Because I remember when I was a kid, people made fun of 4 eyes. Like, you had glasses, something wrong with you. And so here they are trying to have a prescription, basically. So my point in all that is, I try to keep in mind that their narrative is important as well. Their narrative is not my narrative. I can't answer them as a 40-something-year-old dude who sees the trivialness of trying to wear fake glasses to fit in. Because, of course, as an adult, I don't care about that. But my image and my life isn't wrapped up in what my peers think right now, like theirs is. And so I can't negate what they feel, because I'm going to lose them. They're never going to listen to me. It's going to be parents don't understand. So I have to try to understand. I have to try to understand that to them, it really, truly is important to be accepted when they go to school. And it kind of is, right? Like, when you're that age, that's your life, dude. Like, this is it. It doesn't go outside of these walls, and I have to be accepted. So for me, part of changing our narrative is listening and understanding what we don't know, knowing the unknown. There are things that I don't have answers for. Instead of me desperately trying to answer those, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to try to fully wrap my head around what's happening. That is one of the ways that I started to try to change my own narrative. What about you? What are your thoughts? I know you were itching there for a little while. Hopefully you didn't forget. You got to do the Darian thing.
Oh no, I'm way past forgetting. But I want to put what Marissa said up there. Look at that right there. Read that.
There's such a thing as transabled now, where people will hurt themselves, so they form some sort of disability. That doesn't surprise me. I think I've heard of that as well. Actually, I've heard of people give themselves scars and stuff.
Yeah. So, look, can we change the narrative? The simple answer is yes. But I think you kicked off the show by saying, if you don't think you have a narrative, you're wrong. You do. We all do. And I think that's the problem. We kind of said it in some other shows that we've done where we say, everybody thinks they know, man. They say, I would know. I would know. Right. We say that about someone close to us. I would know. I've lived with her long enough. I've known her long enough. I've been around her. I know her. I know my wife. I know my son. I know my daughter. Sure. I know my kids. I know my parents. No. You know that the day that I kind of dread is the day that I pass away and my family tries to interpret my shit. You know what I mean? I've already given them some understandings to how to interpret my shit. Like, and I know they'll still get it wrong. I know they're still going to read some of my stuff that I've written and go like, what the hell was he thinking? And it's like, well, because I go through periods of my life where whatever is in here, I have to release. I have to take it out because it gets out of here. Because if it stays in there, it festers and it lives. And I've dealt with so many people's pain and so many people's struggles and so many people's death that I have to write it in my way, right? And so I used to have to, I went through a period of time where I had to read things that I wrote to Dana just so she would understand, hey, just so you know, I'm not suicidal. But I write from the perspective of the person that was stuck in my head. I had someone stuck in here, right? Or multiple people stuck in here, and I had to write their words down, their screams, their terror, their cries, their pain, their frustrations. I had to write it out to not keep it. That's how I dealt with my problems. I've always dealt with problems that way. I've always dealt with stress that way. So I don't feel stress because I write. And when I write, it's just gone. But I've gone back, Trinity, and I've read some of my shit, and I'm like, what the Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So sure. If that just happens with writings, then what's going to happen with, why did he save this? Why does he have this? What does this mean? What does that mean? Oh my God. Good luck. What I would recommend is just pack up all my shit.
Burn it.
Just burn it.
Burn it.
Because somehow your feelings are going to get hurt. You're going to think something. Yeah. Because unless I die when we're at a really great time of life where everybody's feeling real comfortable. And then even then, if you like the way you feel, let's leave it that way. Because you might misinterpret some stuff. And so I fear that. I actually think of that stuff like my parents. I'm like, dude, I don't want to know. Like, I want to just know I love you, Louie. You're awesome, Louie. Whatever. Yeah. I've already heard my dad's always called me a stupid idiot. That's kind of that's his love language to me, and we're good like that. And I'm his favorite. And, well, I think I'm his favorite. See, that's how psychologically warped I am.
Well, it's narrative.
I'm a daddy's boy. So, but I would hate to accidentally like find something that he wrote and misinterpret it. Like, is he talking about me? And then totally.
My asshole kid. Wish I never had him.
Man, you know what I mean? It's like, oh no. Look, it's bad enough that we have video. And I'll end this point with this. Like, video didn't used to exist when we were little. There was some video, but not everybody was walking around with a damn video camera. Not everybody's walking around with a video camera. But you know who was walking around with a video camera when we were about to have a baby, Danny and I, our first kid, Dahlia? We were. You know who was videoing us? We were videoing ourselves. And you know what I videotaped? Right. And yes, it was videotape. When we went and got the sonogram, and they go, do you want to know what you're going to have? And we're like, yes. Tell us. What are we going to have? And she says,
a baby.
It's a girl. And I was like, really? Nah.
Two of them.
To this day, well, we're all four laughing around, and they got their one with her husband and other one with her boyfriend, and they're just telling stories about their parents and their childhood. They love to bring up the fact The dad was sitting there going, "You got to be kidding me, right? You sure you can't find something there? You sure it's a girl?"
Yeah.
The disappointment in daddy's face. And so what I'm saying is, see, there's so many moments like that unless you understand the entirety of a person, accept the entirety of a person, and you just take that one little video. Imagine if that's all you had. If that's all you had was that video, and you never had all the loving and the playing. Like if I would have died like 2 days after the video, right? Or that's all they would have had.
Yeah.
My dad never wanted me. You know what I mean? And then, you know what I mean? You think about stuff like that, because there are people like that. Your life ended after you said something or did something or wrote something or felt something or whatever, and then it ended. So you didn't get a chance to tell your whole story. You didn't get a chance to come back from that story. And then that's where the story ends. And that person grabs that and watches that, and they fill their narrative in that, however they felt, however their guilt was feeling, or however their anger was feeling. And then they go, "Oh my God, I'm the reason that person died," or "I'm the reason they did this," or "I'm the reason they did this," or "What could I have done differently?" And so those are the things that I'm saying. I just hope that my family knows how to just interpret my shit and not make it about them. Just don't make it about you. I enjoyed my life. I love my life. There is nothing I would do differently. I'm in total peace. But don't let my craziness affect your future. Boom. That's it. So yeah, we can change our narratives, but if you're building upon a personal narrative that's painful, how is that the right road to go down? We've watched scary movies, right? Like if you've ever watched a scary movie and you see somebody going into a scary situation, you said, "Why the hell are you doing that?" That's all of you that are going down narratives that are pissing you off. If you continue to live a narrative that just frustrates you, it's like, why are you going down that road? Change direction. Just go down a different path. That's it. That's simple. It's not that confusing.
Yep. I'm going to second that, and that's kind of like my that'll be my final thoughts, to be honest with you. Before I get to those, just real quick, once again, some housekeeping. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, you can check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch Live, or on any of your podcast platforms. Like, share, comment, all that fun stuff. It really does help. My final thoughts, man, really, to be honest with you, are just the best way to heal, or excuse me, the best way to change it. I just gave it up. The best way to change a narrative is to heal. That's the best way, is to heal from your traumas, heal from the past pains. Don't run from them. Don't hide from them. Heal, address them, confront them, figure out how it impacted you and why. Try to understand the context of the situation and realize that the people who hurt you were kind of hurting, because hurt people, and try to forgive, try to grieve. All these things that we hear all the time, these crazy therapeutic ideas that sound so they're stupid and corny. Do them. They work and they help, right? Because the healthy people have healthy narratives usually. Unhealthy people typically have unhealthy narratives, because they're based upon all the traumas in the past that they haven't healed from, and they're still duplicating those same things over and over and over. They're replicating everything that's ever hurt them, and they're just doing it again. So the best way to change your narrative, first of all, yes, you can do it. Second of all, it's extremely hard. Third of all, the best way to do it is to heal. And the healing looks different for different people. For some people, healing is going to therapy. For some people, healing is moving on. For other people, healing is spirituality. Like whatever it is for you, I encourage you to find that and dedicate some time with that intent, with the intent of, I need to heal. I need to change my narrative. Acknowledge that you have one. Try to figure out if it's helping you or hurting you, and modify it. To me, that's the best way to change the narrative. So, and that is all I got, by the way, kids. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Today is Tuesday, so you might hear, yeah, exactly. Let that shit go. We may or may not be on Friday for We the Middle. I know we got some political stuff coming up, some major moves happening in the United States here. If you don't hear from us on Friday, you'll hear from us shortly afterwards. So stay tuned. Hit the notifications button on whatever you're watching or listening on. Follow us on social media. He is at the Dope Doctor. I am at the Dharma Guy. We are at Dope and Dharma. And that's all I got. Now that you know better, do better.